start off, let me just say, this is the greatest story no one's ever heard before, and the best way to think of it is as a cosmic detective story. So we're going to start our detective story with someone that I'm sure everyone in Britain has heard of, William Shakespeare. And William Shakespeare's story more or less begins when he was 13 years old and he went to the Fete at Leicester and saw all these actors in wonderful costumes and pageants and got inspired. So we're going to jump over from 1577 to 1585, when a very young Shakespeare left his wife and young twins behind in Avon and went adventuring. And the supposition is that he went to London and became an actor and so forth, and eventually rose up through the ranks to become a famous playwright. But that supposition leaves the lost years sort of hanging, and it doesn't explain how Shakespeare, supposedly semi-educated peasant boy, was able to have all this wonderful occult knowledge, this wonderful knowledge of the world in his plays. And that gap of experience, that gap of time, if you will, is where everyone tends to go, oh, well, Shakespeare really wasn't Shakespeare. He was Bacon, he was De Vere, he was Marlowe. No, William Shakespeare was William Shakespeare. He just had a very interesting few years as a secret agent. Okay? And in those wonderful few years as a secret agent, he made friends with the most brilliant mind of the era, Dr. John Dee. And we can trace most of the stuff that is in Shakespeare that has no direct explanation to his years with Dee. Dee had the largest library in England, one of the largest libraries in Europe. And if there was any one place you could go to get everything from Ceremonial Magic of Agrippa to Holinshed's Chronicles to the history of the Irish race, it was Dee's library in Mortlake. So a very young Shakespeare left Avon, and he came to London, and because of his connections with the Earls of Leicester, the Stanleys and the Herberts and that large crowd, he became friends with Sir Philip Sidney's circle, the Areopagus circle, and a minor poet member of that circle by the name of Edward Dyer needed a bright young man who had a good legible hand and could write quickly to be his secretary. So Dyer hired Shakespeare to be his secretary. Now, Dyer, in addition to being a minor poet at this point, was also a spy. And his spy master was this fellow here, Burleigh, William Cecil. So Burleigh sent Dyer and Shakespeare to the continent to follow Dee and Kelly. Now, we have to jump back slightly and explain about Dee and Kelly. John Dee was the most brilliant mind of his era. He's the man that pulled mathematics out of the realm of magic and turned it into a science. He wrote the prologue to Euclid's theorems. He created the system that we still use today for celestial navigation, which allowed the English mariners to conquer the New World, find the New World, and then conquer it. And by the 1580s, early 1580s, John Dee had mastered all of human knowledge as it existed then. And still wanting more knowledge, Dee decided that the only way to get more information was to bump it up a notch and talk to the angels. Now, in the 1560s, Dee had come across several works, one of whom was by the abbot of Spondheim, Trithemius, which codes and green language hid the core of how you do angelic communications. So Dee decided in the early 1580s that he would give it a shot, that he would talk to the angels. And pretty much as soon as he made this decision, an angel came rapping at his prayer room window, which was on the, what we would call in America, the third floor, you'd call it the second floor, of his house at Mortlake. And lo and behold, when he went and pulled the curtains back and opened the window, there was an angel floating in the air, and the angel handed him a shoe stone, a small round globe of rutilated smoky quartz. Now, this shoe stone still exists. If you're lucky, you can go see it in the British Museum, and if you sweet-talk the little lady who's in charge of the manuscript room, she may even open the case and let you touch it. Now, that's what happened to me, and I was standing there holding the stone, and she's going, "Oh, please don't drop it." And I was fighting the New Age desire to rub it on my third eye, put it on top of my head, but all I got to do was just hold it. And just simply holding the shoe stone that the angel gave Dee in 1581 triggered a whole sequence of events over the next year and a half that led to a group of us standing on a mountain in Sedona and chanting the entire Enochian corpus and watching the Ophanim, or the whirling ones, come down as big eye-filled tornadoes. It's a slightly different story. What Dee did with the shoe stone is immediately try any member of his family, anyone standing around, to see if they could see anything in it. And he didn't have very good result with that. His footman, his servant, saw shadows and became frightened. He even tried children. They saw a little bit more, but nothing of interest. Until finally, one fine spring morning in 1582, a very charming con man who introduced himself as Edward Talbot at that point showed up, and after just a few minutes of discussion, Dee ushered him into the prayer room, and Kelly immediately began to see images in the stone, and they were off and running for 8 years continuous of angelic conversations. Now, the entertaining point about those early sessions is that the angels began to deliver a language. But first of all, they had to deliver a filter, and that filter was called the seal of truth. EH20. And the seal of truth is a very interesting diagram. Dan can explain at length why the 5-7 represents symmetry angles and all sorts of truly remarkable ideas and concepts. The angels delivered this so that the transmission would be pure. And they said that not only do you need to have the shoe stone on top of the seal of truth, but you need to have a very special arrangement on the table under the seal of truth. And even the legs of the table need to be sitting on small versions of the seal of truth so that nothing can come through that doesn't pass through this very precise filter. So as soon as they had the seal of truth up and running, the angels delivered, can we have the 64 language grid? Yeah, no, the next one, yeah. And Dee records that he had a piece of parchment in front of him, and on that piece of parchment, very slowly, like developing a photograph, appeared this grid of letters. Now, this is not the entire Enochian alphabet. This is the title of the Enochian letters. Now, in English, we have A, and we spell A, sometimes, but the name and the letter are directly related. In Enochian, the name or the title of the letter is not simple. It's complex. In fact, some of the Enochian letters have 4 and 5, can we skip on just one? Have 4 or 5 different, there we go. Have 4 or 5 different letters attributed to each letter. But it completely fills in the 8x8 grid, and 8x8 is 64, the number of transfer proteins in RNA and the number of codons in DNA. Now, this language grid was given on Good Friday, 1582, and the angels told Edward Kelly that he needed to learn this so he could read the script the next time they got together. Now, Kelly, in the beginning, was probably conning Dee, and he really probably didn't believe it, probably thought